Hello and welcome to this video I have put together of my latest concept art project inspired by my time spent in Canada, Nova Scotia. I went to Canada back in September to visit family, and I used it as an opportunity to design a bite-sized concept art project based on the autumnal season. Canada was amazing, as it always has been the last couple of times we travelled there. We try out new places each visit, and it's always a fun time with my family. It was also a nice change of pace to have a couple of weeks away from just sitting at the desk, focusing more on socialising and having a break from the screen. But I did plan on doing some project work, as I have not been consistent with updating my portfolio as of late, and I felt that I needed to get back on track with it. Canada was a good place to get some ideas. There wasn't anything in particular that inspired me, it was more so a collection of smaller moments and experiences, which helped me to figure out a direction to go with for the project. I started with drawing out my initial concepts, and these were drawn while I was in Canada, while the final designs were then made at a later stage when I returned home. I've tried drawing full artworks while travelling before, and I think it's something my mind just can't really enjoy. My thoughts flow a bit better when I'm at home, at my desk, just able to go through my creative process at a calmer pace. So it was all mostly rough drafts and ideas I produced while in Canada, not stressing myself with creating anything detailed or final, just getting down everything I could potentially explore when I was home. My main idea was to design a personification of autumn and construct a little bit of world building around them, which I thought would be a perfect opportunity to practice more prop design. At first I was just going to do one character, but then I thought it would be a good direction to design two, one of a human-like character with the other being a more mythical creature, who I eventually named Autumn and Fall. My design for Autumn remained pretty consistent from early sketches. I knew I wanted to create a sort of hybrid between a bird and other types of woodland animals, where I then settled on a rabbit-like face and ears with the body of an owl. I had never really practiced birds before, so I made sure to study the subject beforehand and even did a previous video on it. I intended Autumn's design to be simple and a little unsettling. I felt it would be intriguing to show two sides of the autumnal season, autumn representing the quiet stillness, the gradual cold that's creeping in, and just that air of spookiness, while my other character, Fall, represents more of the jovial side with more warmth and coziness. This wasn't always the case, as my first design of Fall was much different. She initially had more of a cold colour palette, with my plan being to give her white hair, kind of like a Jack Frost type character, then wearing like a big warm brown coat. I was sort of trying to be a little bit kind of like symbolic with the design of how like the cold winter is just hiding underneath the warm autumn, but the design ended up feeling a little too undeveloped and half-baked for me. I planned Fall to have more of a mundane appearance to contrast with Autumn's mythical presence, but my design of her just wasn't feeling right for me, and it can be frustrating when you spend so long thinking of a concept and drawing it down just to then have that sinking feeling that it's not the right design. But going back to the drawing board is usually more beneficial to me than not, as it can help me pick out ideas I didn't explore yet, and it was in this case that I figured out a better direction for the character. Fall's design needed to have a bit more warmth and fun injected into it. I saw so many beautiful colours on my trip, the reds and the oranges, and I knew it was something I needed for the designs. So I thumbnailed some more ideas, thinking how I can push the visuals a bit more, and ended up with a design that felt fun and visually interesting. I also redid the colour palettes then, making the hair red with a white cloak and hat to contrast, along with an assortment of golden embellishings. I felt this captured Fall's spirit a bit more, and while the other design could have still worked okay, this one felt much better to me. I will potentially keep this other character though for something else, as I did really like the expression sheet I made for them. Next, it was coming up with Fall's props and items for their storyline. I definitely wanted to give Fall a mode of transportation. She could just walk on foot, but I thought she would look cool travelling in a little style, especially alongside Autumn, who obviously has wings and will be flying. I landed on a bike in the end, something which felt timeless and matched her energy, but I didn't want her to have to be constantly pushing the bike around when not using it. So I did a bit of visual problem solving of how I could design it to become more compact when needed, which is where I landed on the concept of the handlebars being a scepter, which Fall can hold and then activate when she needs her bike. The problem with designing this was I didn't know how to, nor was I the best at drawing bikes. They're complicated to me and I'm not good at drawing these types of subjects from different angles, but I always have a solution to these dilemmas, and if you've watched my previous videos, you'll probably know what this solution is. Blender is a software I don't think I'll ever find not useful. It helps me so much with constructing the rough form of environments and items, which save me so much time when it then comes to drawing them, and it makes the whole process so much more fun. To begin, I first make a model of the scepter. It's not exactly perfect, it was a bit bulkier than I was going for, but overall I was pretty happy with the visuals for it. I then took this and started constructing what it would look like in bike form. I followed a reference of a bike, wanting it to have a bit of an older, more classic bicycle design. After I finish the model, I draw over it and add the colours and the wheel design. I kind of wanted the wheels to have a little flair to them, so I opted for this ornate pattern. Not sure if it would be effective for a real life bike, but I felt that it looked pretty good for a magical one. It was then getting to the point where I started designing the final pages I wanted to present for the project. I usually don't get as many visuals made as I planned to, but for me quality over quantity is very important. I went for a storybook aesthetic to the pages, each one having a unique layout and colour palette, whilst trying to keep it all sort of visually linked together. There isn't too much lore for the characters, as it was all just sort of made from a mixture of what I saw in Canada, but I have got a little story that goes with it, which is autumn and fall are spirits that visit each year as winter starts to draw closer, and in exchange for leaving treats and food outside your windowsill at night, fall will leave you some magical golden thread, which you can then embroider into your clothing, gifting you good fortune for the cold winter months. Fall then stores the gifts in her giant cookie jar, which she transports around using her bike, providing her in autumn with enough sustenance to be ready for the winter themselves and return the following year. I constructed the story to follow a little bit like one of those classic fairy tales. It just matched the cozy feeling I get from the season, and as always, it's just great to have the opportunity to practice subjects I'm not familiar with drawing. I never really accomplished everything I originally planned for a project. The creative process is unpredictable and there will always be some kind of changes made. I didn't end up completing as many designs as I had drawn out, but I sacrificed the quantity so I could spend that time practicing unfamiliar subjects and improving my overall skill level. This was my first time making a travel art video combination. I don't travel very often, especially not by myself, but I think I'd like to try it more in future as new environments can be a refreshing change of pace and it lets me enjoy life a little bit more outside of drawing. This project will be posted to my website as well as Instagram for a full view of the visuals, as well as the sketches of artworks I made for it. Thank you so much for joining, and I will be starting to brainstorm for some future video ideas, especially some focused around the new Procreate Dreams app, which I'm pretty excited to try and practice more animation again. Anyway, thank you so much, and I will see you in the next video.